Hey guys, so we're back with another Pickled Dragon Unscripted. Um, we missed last weekend because it was my son's birthday, and then this weekend that just passed was my birthday, so we're a little late again, a little busy, but here we are. So we got questions that need answering, um, but also a few things going on. Um, as you guys know, I released The Prison of Kos. Released this one not long ago. I was planning on having a giveaway to support the Prison of Kos, and there was a snafu with my order with the prizes, and they came in very late. Somehow the order got caught up in the system, and we resulted in a very late giveaway, but we're going to go ahead with it anyway. And as before, when we did the Evil of Chlorhaven, I provided a number of miniatures as well as the possibility of winning the actual adventure, but miniatures that are used in the actual adventure. So we have a green hag. Of course, there's a night hag in here as well. It's just a bonus, but there is a green hag in the Prison of Kos. Da 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 da. A green dragon. We're set in a jungle. So the Prison of Kos set in the jungle. We're gonna have a green. We're gonna have a green dragon. And the last monster, the last miniature that's going to be up for grabs, is the Hydra. And in the Prison of Kos, we're not just talking about a 5-headed Hydra, we're talking about an 8-headed Hydra. So this one gives you the opportunity to add extra heads. So that's nice. So a $60 value in all when you consider the adventure and all the miniatures. We'll be doing that giveaway here very soon. I am right now the Prison of Kos. You can get the PDF on DriveThruRPG for $5.99. The print files, so the paperback copy, is only available on Amazon right now. But DriveThruRPG is in the process of processing the print files, so pretty soon it'll be a one-stop shop. Both the print version and the PDF available at DriveThruRPG. So I was thinking about waiting to launch the giveaway once everything is set up on the DriveThruRPG. It shouldn't be too much longer, I hope. So look for this cool giveaway in a week or two, hopefully. So Prison of Kos, check it out. I'm also going to try to develop a video where I do a walkthrough of the adventure for DMs, and maybe do one for Chlorhaven, and maybe even like Days of Blight and Days of Blight 2. So anyway, on with some questions. So the first question we have, I would love to know what your all-time favorite setting is and why. Well, I think I've said this many times, but the world of Greyhawk, and really, I have to. I mean, the bias there is the fact that it was my first setting. You know, when I started gaming years and years ago, 1980, 81 in there, that was the setting that was out. You know, that was the first one we bought. This was bought brand new off the shelves of Black's Hardware, and it is well used. The map in there is a little bit tattered, so I'm not going to get the map out, but it comes with the World of Greyhawk pamphlet here. And I loved, part of the reason I love this setting so much is not only because it was my first, but the fact all of the adventures for the World of Grey, or all the adventures that TSR released, whether the Village of Hamlet or Against the Giants, or Barrier Peaks, Expedition to Barrier Peaks, or whatever, all of them, uh, they had a location in the world of Greyhawk. You could go on the map of Greyhawk and figure out where that adventure was, where it was located. And you could, even though not all of the adventures were tied together, you could yourself piece them together. You could send an adventure group through the village of Hamlet, and then send them across the world, across the continent, and go to the secret of Bone Hill if you wanted. You could tie them together however you wanted. And I love the fact that each and every area of Greyhawk had its own like cultural feel. My groups spent a ton of time on the Wild Coast. And the Wild Coast is just north of the Wild Coast. You have like the gnarly forest and the Iron Hills, and that's the area where you have Selene. And you would find the village of Hamlet there, and you had the Temple of Elemental Evil there. The Slavers series against the slave lords, that was all located, or largely at least started along the Wild Coast and south of there and into the Pomage, where all the villainous orcs and demi-humans dwelled. But I just loved the feel of all this, and when you look through the gazetteer here, each country has a little breakdown, and it talks not only about the people and its economy and a little background and so forth, but I love one of my favorite things since I was a little kid I loved was the titles for the lords and ladies of the realm. So the Duchy of Ernst, it was ruled by His Most Lordly Grace, the Duke of Ernst, Warden of the Aborals. It just all of them were like there. His Venerable Reverence, His Lordship, the Viscount of Verbabonk. And it's just, and on and on and on. It's great. I just love this so much. And I remember our original characters. My first character was an assassin, but I soon made a fighter. So Zorod was the assassin, and Torod was the fighter. And Torod quickly became the main character I played. And we, as a group, kind of laid claim to little different areas of Greyhawk, and the area that Torod grew to call home, and eventually ruled over some lands, not as the king, but more like a baron, was in Ulick, which again was fairly close to the Wild Coast, but not necessarily on it. But we just spent our formative D&D years in Greyhawk, and so that's why it's my favorite. But I mean, there's so much. Gary Gygax was a prolific writer, and so it just shows through in all of the materials he writes or he creates, and so it should be a no-brainer why I love this world so much. At least I think old timers might maybe understand more. I also have the box set that came out shortly after the folio. The map folio is what it's called. But yeah, the world of Greyhawk. Check it out. So the next question. Love to hear what line of miniatures you prefer, and do you paint, or if you would possibly pay someone for it. Well, if you're talking pre-paint, let's just talk about pre-painted versus unpainted. Obviously, WizKids has a huge corner of the pre-painted market, and even a large corner of the unpainted market. These days, I used to paint more. Before my injury, I used to paint more. Right now, I just don't have the time between work and therapy and everything else going on. I just don't have the time to paint. So, so I don't. I buy a ton of pre-painted miniatures. I probably have 10, 15,000, maybe more pre-painted miniatures. Um, I don't think I've ever paid anyone to paint a miniature for me. My son does a lot of painting, so if I needed something painted, I would just hand it off to him. But it's a good question because there's a lot of people that ask, "Hey, how can I build my miniature collection?" And if you're looking to build a lot of miniatures fast, what you need to do is look for deals. And when I say deals, I'm not saying, oh, there's a sale at Penny's, or whatever. What I'm saying is you need to look at the way to get the most bang for your buck. And right now, the best way to do that are the D&D board games, like the Wrath of Ashlarden, or the Ravenloft board game, or the Temple of I think it's what. There's one that's based on the Elemental Evil guys, but I think there's 5 or 6 board games out there. But it's board games are $55. It sounds like a lot, but each of them have like 40 or sometimes 50 miniatures. I don't know if any of them have 50, but maybe. But 40, let's just say 40 miniatures. It's like $1 something a miniature, and you're not going to find a better deal than that anywhere. Reaper Bones. If you're looking to paint, the white Reaper Bones miniatures have to be cleaned diligently before you paint them, and they'll say you don't have to primer them, but you got to primer them. Always primer. But the Reaper Bones miniatures, they're very inexpensive. You can find some amazing sculpts. Here's a Reaper Bones right here. The Drow Queen. That's a Reaper Bones. Now this is not the white plastic. This is their new stuff that is supposed to hold paint a lot better. I have primered white Reaper Bones, and that's like this guy. I have primered these guys, and the paint still peels off. The key is to wash them really, really well. I use a toothbrush and like Dial soap and just scrub the living hell out of them before I primer them. But you got to make sure they're dry before you primer. But the new Reaper stuff, I can't remember what it's called. It's like Reaper Black or something like that. It's supposed to hold paint a lot better. So there's that option. And you're going to find some amazing sculpts from them. Just flat out amazing. They're never going to be like Beholder. They're going to be like the Eye Beast, because they don't have the license to make the official D&D miniatures, although there's some that they're overlapping, like chimeras and hydras and whatnot. But and they're generally, you're going to get a really awesome miniature, less expensive than, say, if you go WizKids. These pre-primered miniatures, generally speaking, are, I think this guy's $4.99 or $5.99, something like that. This guy's like $15. Whoops. And the Hydro is like $30 or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But in any case, I think that with WizKids, you're paying for a little bit of the name and the fact that you're getting an officially licensed miniature. This is an actual D&D green dragon, as opposed to the dragons that come from the Reaper line, which are, just kind of more generically designed dragons. But you're going to get more for your money out of Reaper because, they're not doing the officially licensed stuff. But either way, and I'm not trying to knock what WizKids is doing, because there's obviously the board game miniatures I was discussing earlier. I think they're all made by WizKids. And there's some really awesome stuff coming out of WizKids too. And there's other ways, like if you want to, like me, if you're like me and you don't want to have to paint because you don't have time, there's ways to get pre-painted deals. So they have the premium line of miniatures slowly slipping out right now that are pre-painted. They're like $7.99 a miniature. There's the what do you call them? randomized boxes, which I know a lot of people just enjoy buying just to see what they can get. And I think those are like $15 a box. You get 4 miniatures. So that's $4 a miniature, but you don't really know what you're getting. And then every once in a while, they'll come out with something like this. And this was what? Icons of the Realm Cave Defenders. I don't know if you could see that real well, but a bunch of pre-painted bad guys. So there were 6 guys in here, and there were it was like 20 something, low 20s, like $22. So again, after tax, about $4 a miniature, but you see what you're getting. Here you got an ogre, 3 kobolds, 2 bugbears. And then there's another one called Village Raiders that had orcs and other bad guys in it. And again, it was the same pricing strategy. So you can look out for those. And again, spending about $4 a miniature. And that's for pre-painted miniature. Not horrible. Not a bad deal. But you really just break it down. How much am I spending per miniature? Is it worth it? Is it a miniature I'm going to use frequently? Or is it something I just kind of want? Because if you're building a collection, you want to start out by really pinpointing what you want. And then you go to sites like Troll and Toad, or you go to Miniature Market. Miniature Market has sales all the time. Every once in a while, they'll say, 50 to 75% off miniatures. And then everyone runs out there and they start gobbling up all the miniatures as quick as possible because they're a good deal and they're pre-painted. And then there's other manufacturers, other lines of miniatures, like the Cthulhu miniatures. You can remove them from their base and rebase them to, 1-inch scale, 2-inch, so forth, and create your own monsters that way. And a lot of times they go on sale on Miniature Market, so it's something to keep your eye out for. But there's tons of options for miniatures. But if you're just starting out, try to get the miniatures that you're actually going to be using. I mean, you're going to have this impulse. You're going to see something really cool. But a lot of times the really, really cool looking miniatures are something that you might only ever use once, And here's a rebased old school. We're talking early 2000s WizKids orc. And I just popped him off his base, his old WizKids dial base, and glued him to a 1-inch square base. And there we have a running guy ready for combat. Really dusty because he's sitting here on my desk. I don't know why I still have him sitting there, but he's still sitting there in any case. All right, so you guys get the picture. Keep an eye out. I like Miniature Market. I like Troll and Toad. I'm sure there's other sites out there, so just keep an eye out for deals. Try to get the most bang for your buck. Don't try to buy gimmicky things unless you're actually going to use them. I've got gimmicky monsters coming out my ears. So, and another really good place is I just thought of this, but Kickstarter. And obviously you're going to be waiting, and you'll probably have to paint them yourself. But there are Kickstarters for miniatures that obviously some of them are going to be 3D printed, but there's some beautiful stuff happening on Kickstarter, and you can get a lot for your dollar. But again, try to get what you can actually use. So let's move on. Kickstarter, yes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the rise of celebrity DMs and their games. Do you like or dislike guys like Matt Mercer or Chris Perkins? And how do you feel they've affected the hobby? Okay, so I think that people should be able to do whatever they want. If these guys have a big old audience, I didn't even know about Matt Mercer until 2018 myself. And I actually was introduced to him through Joe Manganiello, who he was like, hey, Matt, you gotta go watch this episode of Critical Role. And I had never heard of Critical Role at the time. And it was the episode where Joe steals the hand of Vecna. So that was kind of funny. That was my introduction to Matt Mercer in Critical Role. But I've heard people just go off on these guys before. And I just feel like that's a bit controlling. I don't think that we need to be trying to control what anyone does. If they have an audience, if they have a product that or an angle that gives them a big audience, and they're basically marketing their product, which is Critical Role or whatever, more power to them. I mean, they're attracting more people to the game, which is good. You want. I mean, I've heard stories that fourth edition almost flatlined D&D. And I don't want that. Obviously, we have fifth edition now, which is a great system. So I'm anxious to see what the future holds, and if they are doing their part to make sure that there is a future, great. I don't think I've ever heard either one of them say, this is how you must DM if you want to be a successful DM. In fact, I think I've heard the opposite from them, that, how if you're having fun and your group is having fun, then you're doing it right. There's no right way. But, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever heard those guys say anything like that, remotely like that. They're trying to control how you DM, or they're trying to say there's one right way. And I don't think I've ever heard that from those guys. So that would be that would be the only way I'd have a problem with any of them, is to try to control the way people play the game. I don't think anybody should control the game in any way. If someone's doing something wrong, well, then their players aren't going to want to play with them, and that's their cue that they're doing something wrong. So, but yeah, I think it's great. So one more question here before we sign off. I'd love to hear your different ideas on how to begin a campaign beyond the typical, you all meet in a tavern in the old Pickled Dragon with Argyle, the one-stalked beholder, serving drinks. It's funny that I saw this question. I thought, oh, well, we're towards the end of my piracy campaign right now. And my group and I, we've been talking about the next campaign, and I've already decided, in the last campaign we finished up, they spent a lot of time in Saltmarsh. And inside Saltmarsh, there's an orphanage. Well, at least an orphanage that they founded, their heroes founded in the last campaign. And so my idea was to start the game in Saltmarsh, and they all grew up in the orphanage together. So they all agreed to use races that are generally the same age categories. In other words, an elf would have been long out of that orphanage before any of the other, like a human or whatever. So that wouldn't work. But they're all going to come from the same orphanage. And so regardless of their alignments, their general outlooks on life, I thought it would be an interesting dynamic to have them get together and talk about, what are their backstories together? You all grew up in this orphanage. What is the dynamic as friends in this little group? What was your dynamic growing up, and how does that inform on you now being adults and adventuring together? Excuse me. So that was my idea for a different way other than starting in a tavern. Another possibility is just to put it on the players. I would love to, I never really thought about this before. It just kind of came to me, but have them get together apart from the DM and then come back and say, here's what we came up with. We didn't just meet in a tavern. We, maybe they were all in prison together. Maybe they all were veterans of a war. Maybe they all, I started one campaign very simply where they met, they were all hired on as just a caravan guard. And and the funny thing was that the NPC that they were guarding, the merchant they guarded, would basically reoccurred through the entire campaign. So there was that that one bond, that one bond that tied them all together was this one guy who gave them their first few shekels in their pocket. Um, so I think there are lots of different ways that you can put the party together, but I think doing it in such a way that they can create a bond, whether it's through an NPC or through their backstories, where they can have some sort of unifying bond is huge. I think that really lends itself um, to a campaign where events are more meaningful, life and death is more meaningful, and because bottom line, adventuring has to be dangerous for the game to have kind of a dramatic impact. If it's not dangerous, it's going to just be like a game of Monopoly. So that's what I got for you. Well, I hope you enjoyed this these questions. Now, again, if you have any questions that you would like answered or just discuss, and it's just from my near 40 years of gaming, I'm just throwing it out there from my perspective. There's no right way of doing anything. It's just my ideas floating around in the ether. Um, you know, if you have any questions, put it in the comments below. You can email me at Matra, Mattra, at thepickleddragon.com, or you can message me on Instagram. It's again, the Pickled Dragon. In the meantime, we got the, spilling stuff. Got the Prison of Kos giveaway coming soon. And with that, happy gaming, and as always, do be heroic.